Welcome back to Sharing Our Cultures. Joining me in conversation now is Meena Acharya, a Bala Vihar teacher. Welcome to Sharing Our Cultures, Meena.
Thank you for having me, Lloydetta.
Oh, it's such a pleasure.
The pleasure is mine.
It's been a while we haven't actually been together, so this
It's
is
been a
good,
long time,
yes,
yes.
this is a good opportunity to do that. And of course, I know you're such a good storyteller, and I want you to share a story with us, which I think
Certainly.
is so important, about the king and a wise minister.
Certainly. It's a beautiful story that we tell our children at the temple. There was a king once upon a time, and he had a wise minister. Whenever they were in any situation, under any circumstance, the minister would tell the king, by the grace of Lord, by the grace of God, this has happened. And the king would keep quiet every time. One day there was a calamity that fell on the kingdom. And the king was very disturbed and upset. And when the minister came in, he said, by the grace of God, things will change. And the king was very angry. He said, where is that God of yours? Who is that God of yours? And what can that God of yours do? I want answers to those questions within 24 hours. If you cannot give me the answer in 24 hours, you will be beheaded. And the minister was really upset because those are questions that are not easy to answer. However, the king had ordered and his orders had to be respected. The minister left the palace, went home. When he got home, he was really upset and worried. He knew that he wouldn't see another day because he was not able to answer those questions as they should be. His daughter noticed that my father is really upset today. There is something that is bothering my father. She kept on asking her father, what was it that was concerning him? And he wouldn't say anything. The minister kept quiet. Finally, he couldn't resist and he told his daughter. He said, these are the 3 questions the king has asked me. And I don't have an answer for that. What am I going to do? I'm going to be beheaded tomorrow. And this young girl, she said to her father, if you will allow me, I will go to the palace when the court is in session, and I will answer those questions for you. And the minister thought, I am incapable. I don't know what my daughter can do, but let me allow her, let her do so. So the next morning, this young girl walked into the court, which was full in session. As she walked up to the king, he looked at her and the king asked her, where was the minister? And she replied, he has sent me to represent him today. And he said, but I had asked him 3 questions. She said, yes, I do know you asked him questions. I'm going to be answering those questions for you today. And the king was a bit perplexed, but he said, all right, so answer my questions. And this young girl, tiny little thing, she looked at the king and she said to him, she said, if you have questions, and if I'm answering them, then I'm in the position of a teacher. And a teacher always occupies a higher position than the student. In that case, you will have to come down from your throne and allow me to sit on the throne, and you will have to sit at my feet, and I will answer the questions. The king really wanted answers to those questions, so he agreed, and he sat down. And she said, okay, now I'm going to order those who are in the service of the king to bring me a cow into the court. So they brought in a brown cow into the court. She then ordered them to feed the cows some grass, and they fed the grass to the cow. Next thing, she ordered them to milk the cow. So once the cow was milked, she looked at the king and asked him. She said, what is the color of the milk? He said, it is white. What is the color of the cow? He said, it is brown. And what about the grass? He said, it is green. She said, you were asking me who is my God? My God is one who can make a brown cow eat green grass and give white milk. So the king found that fascinating and convincing as well. So he said, okay, so you have answered one of my questions. What about my second question about where is God? She said, oh yes. She asked them to switch off all the lights in the court, and it was dark in the court, and she ordered one of the persons in service of the king to bring in a candle. And then, of course, ordered them to light the candle. And once the candle was lit, the court was filled with light. And she asked the king, now please tell me, where is the light of this candle? And the king said, it is everywhere. She said, well, just like the light of the candle is everywhere, my God is everywhere. And it kind of convinced the king. He said, well, that sounds possible. He said, but now tell me, what can your God do? Can you answer that question? She said, oh, certainly I can. She said, my God can make the impossible possible. It was never going to be possible for a tiny little person, a small person like me, to ever sit on a throne. But here you see me seated on the throne and you at my feet. That is what my God can do. And as she finished this, and the king was convinced, the minister enters the court, and the king was so pleased with the minister. He says, yes, thank you for giving me the knowledge of who your God is, and now I have come to understand that a lot can happen by the grace of the Lord.
Yeah.
God.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, there's so many aspects to that story.
Aren't there?
Yes.
A concept that is very difficult to bring to children is brought beautifully through stories.
Yes, it is. And to some adults as well.
I guess.
Ask those questions.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I think your work as a teacher and your role model and a mentor for so many years has been really appreciated by our community. And
Thank
you have been able to put together two worlds, your traditional culture as well as the new culture here. How have you been able to do that?
So, first of all, what is it that we call a culture? A culture is a group of people living in a geographical location, having certain values, enjoying certain type of music, dance, literature, food, and having similar habits. So the culture is a living entity. When we move from one geographical location to another geographical location, we adapt to the values of that land. We accept some of their better ideas and better values, and we bring our traditions and values to this new culture. So it becomes a beautiful living entity where we move.
Right. And that's what you've been able to do so well.
We've been blessed to be here in Newfoundland and able to do it,
Right.
yes.
Now, you mentioned values a couple of times there. How can we think of values in terms of what we want to? We have to make that decision, which values we're going to keep, which ones we want, and sometimes just misplaced values.
True. So, first of all, when we talk about values, when do we value a value? We value a value when we live it. Otherwise, it may be there as a value, but when the time comes, do I value it? I'll give you a simple example. I value healthy eating, a healthy diet. But when I see some unhealthy foods, am I tempted? Do I indulge? And it does not mean I don't enjoy. So now this is a very simple example, but I must not cheat. But if I'm going to gain something, do I live up to that value of not cheating? So that, of course, is a value, has a value when I live it. And how do we get our values in life? And what our values, do we need someone to teach us our values? But if we look within ourselves, we don't need to go any further to get values in life. Do I like to be hurt? I don't. Do I like somebody lying to me? No, I don't. Do I like somebody cheating me? No, I don't. I don't like to be hurt. I don't like to be lied to. I don't like to be cheated to. It's exactly the same what everybody else wants. And if I don't want it done to me, I should also respect that others don't want it to happen to them. And then I live it. Until I don't live it, it is not a value. But sometimes, because we are so overcome with what we want in life, that we may have misplaced values. And those misplaced values can cause us a lot of grief. One of the misplaced values in our times is money. We think that with money we can get everything. But if we are only chasing money, we are probably not finding time for our families, not finding time for our communities, also for our own self to maintain our health. Now, this is so beautifully brought out in the story of the Midas touch. King Midas valued gold, and he wanted everything he touched to turn into gold. So he touched his food, it turned into gold. Touched his daughter, turned into gold. That is such a beautiful story for misplaced values.
Yes, most certainly.
Isn't it?
Yes, it is. And I was even thinking of the fact that we do unto others as we'll love them to do others to do unto us. It's an age-old wise saying, which is true if we are able to keep that, and maintain that in everything that we do.
Again, that is living it.
Right.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. And of course, you've been teaching for how many years now?
Well, I've been teaching
A
long time, yes. For the last 30 years, I have been teaching. My mother had started initially teaching Vedanta, which is the Hindu spiritual philosophy, if I may say. And then I started helping her. And after she has passed on, I have taken it on full time.
Right.
Not full time when I say I'm on her behalf. I continue the classes that she had started.
Okay. And these classes are primarily to younger children?
Yes, all age groups.
All age groups,
All age groups, yes.
Wow, they're really blessed to have you and your wisdom, and of course a lot of what you've gleaned from your mother as well.
Yes, I think it is sharing. In sharing, it grows within me as well.
Right.
So I feel that I bring this to others because the teaching of Vedanta is essentially the teaching of living a life of peace and happiness. For peace and happiness, we keep looking outwardly. But if peace and happiness were in any object outside, any given object should have the ability to give the same degree of peace and happiness to whoever has it, and it should remain with the person as long as they have that object.
Yes, that is.
But we all notice that a childhood toy that brought us joy is unable to give us joy in adulthood. Right. It doesn't have that ability. So obviously it is not in that object. All that object did was draw the joy and happiness and peace that was within us and brought it out.
Thank you so very much. Wow, in such a short time, we've gleaned so much from your wisdom and your experience and your inspiration, and we thank you so much. Thank you for all that you do in our community, and thank you for being such a lovely, giving person that you are. Thank you.
Thank you, Lloydetta, and I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to give.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Sharing Our Cultures will be right back. Welcome back to Sharing Our Cultures. Joining me now in conversation is Dr. Pradeep Bobby. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. Great to be here.
It's good to have you here. Now, I know you're the director of the observation team at Quaicoe. Can you tell us what your day-to-day work looks like?
Sure. So our team does a lot of work with satellite data, and so half the team is involved with delivering routine services. So for example, we do ship and iceberg monitoring, river ice monitoring. We maintain some of the ground stations where satellite data is downlinked and then delivered to customers. And so about half the team is involved with some of those routine type activities. And the other half of the team is involved with science and engineering, so developing new applications for satellite data or even developing satellite systems. So it's a mix between like the hands-on and the designers and the engineers and the scientists.
Okay, and what side are you on?
Well, I'm an engineer,
Okay.
and so I coordinate some of the activities both on the services side of things as well as the engineering research.
Okay, thank you. So can you tell us a little bit about some of the interesting projects you've worked on?
Sure, probably the most interesting project I've been involved with, it was about 10 years ago, but there was a major calving event from a glacier in Greenland. And so these massive icebergs started coming down. So one of them was about 80 square kilometers, another one was 60 square kilometers, and it started coming down the coast of Newfoundland. And so it came from an ice shelf. So usually the bigger icebergs are this way, horizontally, the bigger draft they are. And so they don't really come close to Newfoundland waters and to some of the operations, the oil and gas operations. But this one came from an ice shelf. And so it didn't have as much thickness. And so the oil and gas industry was interested in sending a team out there to do some tests on the iceberg, see how thick it was, and put some beacons on it. And I was part of that team. And so we took a plane and then a helicopter. We landed on the iceberg, did a whole bunch of measurements for 3 days. And so that was definitely the most exciting project, really, really hands-on. But we're also working on another really exciting project right now. The Canadian Space Agency is in the process of designing and developing a new satellite system. And so we're one of the teams that's involved with coming up with design concepts and costing and coming up with the design specifications for that. So really, really wide range of things that we're involved in.
Okay, and so why is it important, this type of work that your company is doing at Quaicoe?
Well, for example, with the Ice Island work, it was helping maintain safety and efficiency of operations for one of our biggest industries here in Newfoundland. And for the satellite project, for example, that's really important because Canada is a world leader in this type of satellite technology. And these satellites usually only last for about 5 or 10 years. And the current satellite is probably set to expire in another 5 years. And so coming up with a new satellite to replace that so it can support science applications and ice monitoring and wetlands monitoring and all sorts of things that the government of Canada relies on.
Okay, so as an engineer, you had a choice of so many disciplines to go into. Why did you choose this one?
Well, it was, I was a strong student in my undergrad, and when I decided to go to grad school, I wanted something that was a little bit challenging, a little bit different. And so I decided to do something related to electromagnetics, and I ended up working with HF radar, which is a very small niche area. There's not a lot of work that happens in that area. But then when I started working at Quaicoe, a lot of that background and understanding how radar worked was very useful because we were using a high-frequency radar that kind of is on the shore and looking out onto the water. But now this is a spaceborne radar that's looking down onto the Earth. So it was a different way of operating the radar and a different type of radar, but a lot of those same principles were still useful for me to understand and know.
Okay, and so you get a chance to do some traveling with your work.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So not so much travel in the last couple of years, but it is nice because my wife doesn't like cold places. I do a lot of work with sea ice and icebergs. So I've gone to some interesting places, kind of out of the way. So to Norway several times, to Iceland. I guess there's interesting trips like that.
Okay.
And of course the trip to the Ice Island, which was amazing, once in a lifetime.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and so currently, can you share what are some of the things you're doing now?
Sure, some of the things we're working on now, so there's that space agency
Right,
project
yes,
we're working on. We're also working on several projects related to wetlands monitoring and mapping.
Right.
And so Canada has, I think, the world's largest concentration of wetlands, and there's a strong importance in protecting those wetlands and understanding where they are and how they're changing, and we're involved in some work like that. Also, I mentioned some of the work in ship and iceberg monitoring. So that's helping promote safety of the operations offshore. We're also moving more into vessel monitoring in general for national security purposes. We've actually done several projects for Defence Research and Development Canada because a lot of times we're interested in seeing icebergs, but the Canadian government is interested in knowing where the ships are and if the ships are going where they're not supposed to be going. And so we've done several projects related to that as well.
So then it's helping, for example, if ships are in a particular part of the sea so that they don't collide with the icebergs? Is that part of it?
Well,
or?
that could be part of it, but also for national security reasons.
Okay.
Canada has a huge coastline, a huge maritime area, and we want to make sure that people aren't entering Canadian waters illegally, or if there are vessels going into the Arctic and they aren't well equipped to enter the Arctic, and they haven't informed people that they're there. So the government wants to know about that, just to prevent search and rescue incidents as well.
Okay, that's very important.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, and so how has your academic background prepared you for the work you're doing now?
I think an academic background is really important. I think if you talk to anyone who's graduated from a university, the things that you learn specifically in university aren't necessarily exactly what you're going to do in your job, but I know going through the engineering program here, you get exposed to a lot of different topics, and you get familiar with a lot of different analysis methods and mathematical and physics principles, and you're forced to try to apply that when you're in school. And so the same thing happens when you're working. You don't do the same thing, but you apply those same principles, those scientific and engineering principles, to other areas. Another thing that the engineering department teaches here is just how to work under stress. And so there's a lot of courses, there's a lot of coursework. You can't take a course in the summer, so you could do less during the school term. Then you have to take an extra course. So the idea is that they force people to be able to work under pressure, so that when you do have those pressure situations in a work environment, you know how to handle it.
And I'll say on time management as well.
Yeah, absolutely, time management, yeah. So there wasn't much relaxation, you know, every lunch break was doing work, and every evening and the weekends. But it paid off, and then you can decide how you want to have your own balance when you start your work.
Right, okay. And you recently completed your doctoral program.
Yes.
What was the focus of your research?
So that was, I started at age 38. Full-time student for 4 years, wife, mortgage, kids, but it was definitely worth it. So I've been doing a lot of applied type engineering research for my professional career. This was a chance to do something more fundamental, and so I was looking at electromagnetic energy and how it interacts with different media. So I was looking at a rough surface with layers underneath it and what kind of signal, and I was applying that to sea ice ridges.
Okay, so you sort of were continuing in the same work.
Yeah, kind of more fundamental. So I really do like ice. I really do like working with icebergs, but I didn't want to just come up with a tool that could improve those things. I just wanted to understand things at a more fundamental level, just to see if I could do something challenging at that level again. And I'm glad I did. It wasn't necessarily useful career-wise, but now I guess I have those extra initials in front of my name. Not that I use them very much, but it's nice to have, especially in certain circles.
Yeah. And so why did you mentioned you're drawn to the icebergs, and so why do you think that's,
I think whenever you start working in something, it ends up becoming more interesting to you. So I grew up here in Newfoundland, and many years icebergs would come, and I wouldn't even be that interested in them. But then when you're seeing them from space, or you're working with them, you're understanding more about what makes them so special and unique. And Newfoundland's actually one of the few places in the world where icebergs and human populations interact. And so it's really special being here and working in this area. I just got more drawn into doing this type of work and more interested in ice and marine environments in general.
So I guess work is not just work for you, it's like your passion.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember when I went on a conference in Iceland, there was a place called the Glacier Fjord. So there was a glacier that had been retreating, and there was a lagoon formed, and then there were just thousands of icebergs sitting in this lake. And I didn't care where else I went, I just really wanted to go there, and it was amazing, it was beautiful. Right. And so yeah, it's something I would do in my spare time as well.
Okay, that's great. Yeah. Now Sharing Our Cultures works with a lot of young people in high school students primarily, and what would be your advice to them if they're thinking of pursuing a career as one that you have now?
Yeah, I think engineering is a great career to choose. I have a couple of daughters, and I'd like to show them little things about what I'm working in, just to see if they're interested. But I know when I started engineering, I had a misconception that you had to have a certain type of personality, or you had to have certain capabilities. I remember speaking to the other Dr. Quaicoe at the time, just because I was concerned because I wasn't good with electronics, and he said, they'll teach you everything you need to know. And so if you work hard and you're willing to learn, then I think you can learn really interesting things. And as you go through the program and as you start your work experiences, you'll find what kind of niche, you'll kind of find what you're interested in. But an engineering education really prepares you to be a problem solver and a hard worker, and I think that's something that's useful for lots of different careers. Right now I'm doing kind of project management and personnel management and proposal writing, very different from the differential equations I was solving even just a few years ago for my PhD. but you definitely develop a broad skill set doing engineering.
Okay. So when they're in high school, what were some of the subjects that you took, the courses you?
So definitely the
The
sciences.
sciences,
Yeah, math
okay.
and sciences. But then a lot of the other ones that you would have thought weren't so important are really important. So interacting with people and understanding about cultures and about the world. We have a really diverse team. Even though a lot of engineers are men, typically, my graduating class was 90% male. Our team is about half and half because we have some of the scientists. We have people from a biology background. And so you have different personalities and different types of people interacting, different people from different cultures from all over the world. And so just interacting with those people, trying to make sure everyone's happy and contributing and feels appreciated. So all those things are really important as well.
Okay, that's true, because you have a diverse team, then there's so
Yeah.
many ways in which they can enhance the work that you do.
Exactly. So the work shouldn't be limited by the way I think things should be done. But if you have diverse people that are very qualified and capable and competent, it makes sense to be able to draw on their strengths and bring out those strengths rather than me as the director trying to tell everyone what should be done.
Yeah, and that's true. And we're going to try to make sure we have more girls interested in science and math.
Well, we just hired 3 students, and 2 of them are girls, and our last hire was a woman as well. And I think we might actually have more women on our team than men.
Yes. Okay.
So-
Yeah. Thank you so much. We really do appreciate you taking the time to be here with us today.
Yeah, and thanks for the conversation and for the invitation to participate like this.
You're very welcome. And Sharing Our Cultures will be right back. Thanks to Meena and Dr. Bobby, and to you for watching. Join us again next time for more remarkable stories from people from around the world who are making a difference in Newfoundland and Labrador.